Good morning, Vietnam, and good afternoon, good evening, and hello to everybody out there. This is your co-host, Frank Spicer, CEO of Metafide, and with me, I have Radio Frog, our amphibious intern, and Matt Cross. So, how's it going, guys? What's going on, Matt?
What up, everyone? Doing great today, man. Always great days at Metafide. Just so excited about the upcoming launch, so just trying to get ourselves there right now.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, Radio Frog?
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Oh, I'm doing great here. Can't complain. It's good to see so many familiar faces from the Discord in here.
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Also, just to get to it, July 24th, 4 o'clock Eastern time. You got Bitcoin testing 120. It's bouncing around in the 119K area. ETH is cruising along, and just a couple pieces of news maybe we could hit before we get into the topic of the day, Matt. Not sure if you've seen the graph on pump.fun, but it looks like that's turned into a bad time for some of the people holding that token, it seems.
Yeah, man. I think we all saw that one from a mile coming.
Yeah.
Everything they've ever launched is some type of rug pull. So it's ironic, when the chart looks like a rug pull themselves.
Yeah.
And there wasn't sufficient liquidity, so it was bound to happen eventually.
That was pretty quick, though. The thing tanked right after it launched. Typical scenario with everything that seems to have gone through that platform, which is that, you have a few early people aggregating a bunch and then dumped on the retail investors as they came in. Again, the problem with a lot of projects in crypto is just that, right? And we saw it. We saw it coming. We actually predicted it at our, one of our meetings here at the company that would happen, and it did. So, it's partly, on them for planning that, but it's also at some point people have to smarten up. You gotta pick and choose what you're getting involved with, and if you needed any more proof points, like you just said, Matt, every single no, I mean maybe not every single platform, but just about every single token through that platform has been some type of rug pull, where not anything lasts, and it's just who can get out the fastest, right? It's weird that people keep falling for it. Like, what am I missing? Like, why does that keep working? Do you think?
Well, I think I actually saw a meme about it the other day, right? And they talked about spending like $50 on something in real life and then losing $3,000 on a meme coin. And the person, had their hand over their head when they spent the $50. And it's because I think people are willing to have more risk or spend more money on the dream, and what they do is they sell the get rich quick dream, and people are willing to take that shot 100 times out of the day instead of taking a shot of something in reality.
Yeah. Well, if we're gonna tie it into what we're gonna talk about, which is the finance system, the implications of the Genius Act and Clarity Act that's in front of I think it's in front of the House right now, right, or in front of the Senate. Um, Partly, the reason why I think people keep falling for it is the existing financial system isn't really working for people either. So it's like they're looking for some way to gain some kind of advantage, and like you said, people want to take these wild chances on things that are too good to be true because they don't have a lot of other things that they can count on either, and the institutions are. Are suffering, their credibility is suffering because what they've been doing, and it's the case for Bitcoin. The reason why Bitcoin came about is because in the very first block, called the Genesis block on the Bitcoin network, the first block that got written was a protest against QE2, which is quantitative easing. It's another way to say inflating the money supply. They were inflating the money supply in order to buy out toxic assets with fiat dollars and essentially transfer the risk from the bankers who held stupid bets and decided to do it. The bankers just rugged the public, and government transferred the government of the United States through the Fed wind up transferring the risk from the bankers who should have been held accountable to the taxpayers who are funding the government and the holders of dollars, which is everybody out there, and obviously it disproportionately impacted poor people because it devalued what they could buy with what they were working for. So, and it's only gotten worse since then. So, I mean, I think you'd agree, right? Like, I don't know that the system is serving people very well right now, and I think it's sort of a symptom of what you're seeing right now with these wild bets.
Yeah, I think the money continues to get concentrated towards the top, and opportunity continues then to dry up, and then people are pushed into alternative situations where they'll do whatever it takes to break out of that. And so I think we need to build better opportunities for people, because like you said, the system isn't currently serving people and they're asking for something better.
Yeah, and just to let everybody know where I stand, like I'm not against the concept of billionaires, and I'm not against the people amassing wealth for having a great idea and doing something to change a bunch of people's lives. Um, I don't even know what I would do in one of those situations. But what I wouldn't do was use the money to pull up the rope behind me so that no one else could do well. And it seems like that's kind of what's going on with at least people who are making their money and their gains from the financial system and the way it's set up. If you're building great products or you're building brand new ways to do things, then I'm actually one of those people that thinks like, yeah, if you took the risk and you funded it, but as soon as you start getting handouts from the government and you're using taxpayer money to do what you got to do, that's not your stroke of genius that's doing it. That's essentially transferring the risk of running your business to people who didn't sign up to fund it, right? And so that that I think is sort of an unjust framing of the way the the money is flowing. I mean, it's an accurate framing of it, but it's an unjust way to execute it. I just think that you can't stick poor people with the bill over and over again and keep squashing them down, because eventually, you push too hard. Even even the most resilient of people have limits, and I think we're sort of nearing that. So it's great to see the markets doing what they're doing on the Web3 crypto side, like where they're reacting to the news last week of President Trump signing the Genius Act, which, to reiterate for everybody, it mandates that stable tokens have to be funded 1-to-1 so they can be redeemable in dollars at no discount. So it's not like uh, there's an ability once the thing is fully implemented, which they have 3 years to implement it, but it's not like there could be a bank run because you can pull out all of the dollars in the system and they should be redeemable 1-to-1. There's audit requirements for it. So I think that's a good starting point, because what it does is it means that going forward, if your assets are backed with crypto, they're backed with stable tokens, then you don't have to worry if the bank has enough money to redeem you. Whereas in the current economy, if there are deals that are financed in dollars and the system has some sort of cascading debt defaults, like we saw in the 2008 Lehman Brothers banking crisis, um, and people go to withdraw money to have their liquidity and try to keep it safe, the banks might not have enough dollars to do that because of the nature of the fractional reserve system. So I think one of the implications of that bill is that when you need to make sure that if you go to get dollars back, it will be in stable tokens, because you can't have enough to cover some of the redemptions. You have to have enough to cover all of them, which is a completely new, since at least 1933, way of carrying it out. And probably I would say, because bankers caught on pretty early, since the creation of the Federal Reserve and starting around 1914 in the United States, banks didn't carry all of their reserves. That's why there were bank runs. I mean, there were bank runs early as early as 1907, where it was sort of stopped by J.P. Morgan, who stepped in, partly out of self-interest, right? Because what he saw was, oh no, the financial system that I'm standing at the top of is about to topple. So if I don't backstop it with some confidence, um, I'm going to see I'm going to see this potentially dissolve. And then that started the ball rolling for people to say, well, what if J.P. Morgan hadn't stepped in? What would happen? So they created an independent entity, the Federal Reserve, with the ability to put money into circulation. I think what we saw last week was the first attempt to fix that path that we were on. It took 111 years, but I think we're starting to make some progress. And the corollary to that, Matt, is that it probably starts to encroach on the power of the Fed. Do we agree with that?
Oh, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. I don't think there's a lot of love lost between Donald Trump and his administration and the Fed and the Fed chair, Jerome Powell. So if anybody's following those politics, there's definitely there was if there wasn't a purposeful shot across the bow, it definitely is something that the Trump administration has to be laughing about in private, because it takes power out of the ability at the people at the Fed to just say we're going to swing economies one way or the other. And I'm going to direct this question at Radio Frog. So if we think that there's there's going to be stable tokens in the hands of more people because they're going to be accepted and there's going to be rules for how to accept them. And if they're preferable to dollars in a lot of cases, some of those are going to go to, well-known anti-inflationary assets like Bitcoin. They're going to go to decentralized finance tokens that, Ethereum is the native gas token of the Ethereum network. So that'll be in demand. What do you think happens with the rest of the money that's in digital assets? Like, what do you see coming out of that?
Well, yeah, I think that first of all, the Genius Act is huge. Like you were just speaking on liquidity. You saw it just today, pump, you know, pump and dumped coincidentally, and you saw with FTX a few years ago, and there's just been this huge issue with liquidity within crypto, and it's been the downfall, I think, with a lot of projects. Like I just mentioned, FTX with Celsius Network, and I think that legitimizing crypto, backing it 1 to 1, where there's with the Genius Act, where we know there's always going to be reserves to back any selling or buying of these stable tokens like USDC, etc. And I think that this is going to spread more money into the market, like you just mentioned, buying Bitcoin, buying Ethereum, and especially for us at Metafide with our native token FIDE token, there's just going to be more people buying into cryptocurrency than there was before. I think this sentiment is reflected. You see Circle Group, who co-founded USDC, they're exploding. Their stock is up over $150 since it IPO'd a couple months ago. And I think that this is reflecting across the general sentiment of people. And I think that what it means is people are going to be, looking to buy stable tokens. But when people have money and they have these things, they want to use them at places. And now people can easily swap them for Bitcoin, for Ethereum on our own platform, Metafide in our games. People will be able to bring in stable tokens, swap them into FIDE to play, and then on the way out, swap them out, easy peasy. And I think it's just overall going to be great for the market that now people kind of have some trust behind crypto projects. It's not just some volatile asset. Nowadays, with the stable tokens, people know it's going to stay. It's going to stay at a reasonable price. It's going to stay fair, and at the end of the day, it's going to be safe, and people can now safely purchase crypto and safely use that crypto online in Web3 projects. And essentially just, it's going to be, like you said on Bloomberg last week, Frank, we just saw the mainstreaming of crypto. And I think it's going to be great for bringing crypto across the market.
Yeah, good point. And also, to your point about USDC and the explosion of the stock price, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Frog, your father, who reminds you just about every chance he gets that he was in that IPO, correct? Like he got in.
100%. Well, the team suggested that it would be a great investment. This is not someone who is into crypto whatsoever. My dad actually back in the day was not a big fan of crypto, but hearing about the stable token and USDC and the Genius Act that was being in the works at the time, he and ultimately ended up buying in. And now every chance it goes up a decent amount, he gives me a call while he's at work and he reminds me um, how great of an investment it was.
Yeah, shout out to Mr. Radio Frog there. So great job on that. Good call, and welcome to the party. So it's like you and there's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of that same example being carried out, templated, and replicated across the world right now, bringing more and more people into the asset class. Uh, the fact that it's fully liquid and backed means that it's a preferable way to transact. Also, Matt, we talk about this all the time. The impact on the velocity of money should not go overlooked. Like where before it would take you hours to send a wire or sometime to settle a bank transfer. Now you can do it in seconds on a blockchain. You could do it over the weekends. You could do it at night when the banks are off hours, right? So, the velocity of money and the fact that it's readily available, that more people can have it, could only mean that you're going to get some people on the edges starting to look into other ways to use the asset, right? And we talked about a few last week about what we thought would happen in terms of like customer loyalty points and incentivize and supply chains and things like that. You want to talk about that a little bit? What you think could be coming down the road with regards to how stable tokens are implemented in the market?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So I think it's going to be, a very fast growing industry. I think overnight, right, we're going to see, like you said, people offering more rewards and incentives to get people to use their stable coin. Now you have the ability for, large corporations all to offer their own stable coins, and they have this ability to incentivize their buyers to also hold their stable coin and do purchases in their own stable coin. And so what you're going to have is, an industry where Walmart and Target each have their own stable coin. So you'll want to hold it as a buyer, but all of their other suppliers, they'll say, hey, if you guys hold this stable coin, we'll offer you a certain amount of yield or discount to, have the purchasing power done in this stable coin. And I think, it's going to be great for retail in the beginning because there's going to be a ton of rewards and incentives given out to all of us, similar to how credit cards compete for our value by giving out various point systems. But on the other side, I do worry that it will be a race to eventually zero for some of these larger companies because, they're all going to have to try to offer some competitive rewards. So to get you to hold their stable coin, they're going to continue to offer up more and more rewards until a lot of that value gets depleted for the corporation. So, what I think we could do from that is absorb, I don't think it's smart to get a bunch of credit cards, but in the beginning, try to use as many different stable coins as you can, soak up all those rewards and then just get ready, for as those start to lose value in the time, and then you make sure you offload them, while they're still at an all-time peak. And it's gonna be, I think, happen really fast because people are gonna see, how fast settlement could change for them. Like Frank said, the velocity of money. So it's gonna be a quick way for them to pull in money, but that scenario is not gonna be long-term sustainable.
Yeah. Hey, wait a minute, Matt. If everybody has their stable token and everybody has to abide by the same uniform rules of the stable token, and the stable tokens themselves cannot earn interest according to the Genius Act, does that mean that USDC might not be as valuable as the market is attributing to it?
Mm, I don't think so. I think USDC is always going to be very valuable because, they were the first to do it. They have the most trusted and regulated format. And I think as all these other people issue stable coins, what's going to come down to you accepting that stable coin is, how valuable is the source or how trusted is that source. And I think, USDC is positioned themselves really well with their, current lobbying and their relationships that they've made in the government, where I think they'll be able to maintain that value. And, you can still go to an exchange, and exchanges are, doing loans and other things in USDC. So you'll still be able to get, say a 10% yield or maybe 5% yield, depending on the time of the year or how active the industry is off of that USDC. So I think it will still remain, very popular, despite, the other rewards that other people decide to give out.
So you think the existing track record of USDC will be able to outweigh things like maybe if Amazon makes all of its suppliers and vendors use like its own stable token, or Walmart or Target, you don't see any of them as potentially displacing USDC in this case?
I definitely see them growing in popularity extremely fast. And I think, as they do, yes, you'll see a little value loss in the company just because it's an ability for more competition to come into the market. But when you look at what's securing it, you're always going to say, hey, USDC is secured by T-bills. I trust in the success of the American economy. As long as that doesn't implode, it's always going to maintain its value. I don't know, what exactly the value of, Walmart, Amazon, Apple is. Of course, I could try to do my research, understand, what's the value of the company compared to their debt, and say, okay, based on this, I think it's secure enough. But at the end of the day, I think that's, more of a research type of question. And the majority of people don't want to, do all this research into the asset. They just want to say, hey, I trust the US. Let's go with that one.
Got it. And so, what this could mean for Metafide and what we're doing, it's pretty simple, right? We're looking at a potential where more and more people have an asset that is in the Web3 asset class, right? We're going to accept it and let people swap into our game. So if you have USDC, we're going to let you, on the chains we support, swap into the asset so that you can play the games with Fide. You won't really feel it. It'll happen really smoothly. And then when you want to withdraw, you'll be able to withdraw back out into the asset like a USDC, right? So for us, the takeaway is it just opens up the market for the number of people who can be involved with the next thing on our roadmap, which we're going to launch, which are the games. But it also means that there's more people that could potentially come into the other products that we have on the roadmap too. That's right? Like we can all agree that's very simple, right?
I agree with that.
Okay. So
100%.
Yeah, that's right. But what do you think the risks are here? Because obviously there's some risks. So I'll put this to you, David. I'm a Radio Frog, whose real name may or may not be David. We 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 do you see any systemic risk in introducing stable tokens instead of something like a dollar, which could be inflated by injecting liquidity into the system? Is there anything that you could foresee possibly being a problem with that?
Well, 100%. I think that just the space that stable tokens can be used compared to the dollar. Like you said, on Bloomberg last week, not all crypto projects are good projects. I think that there is a lot of hesitancy in the space. There's a lot of suspicious projects in the space, as I think everybody in this space knows right now. And I think that it does open up people to more probably negative projects than maybe the US dollar could, especially with the history of crypto. But no, I think that overall, I think that backing having an asset completely backed 100% liquidity that's going to stay at a set price. I don't see how that's any more risky than the dollar, especially as you mentioned earlier. The dollar is controlled by the Fed. It's controlled by no one else. Like you've seen the battle that the Trump administration is having with Jerome Powell right now, where he wants them to cut rates, he's refusing, and it's making essentially the dollar a political battle rather than what it should be, which is just a monetary system. And I think that if the USDC token and other stable tokens can stay out of that realm of making money a political issue, then I think that there's no reason why it's not more legit or more stable than the US dollar.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so Matt, do you think that what we get out of this is essentially maybe a two-tiered financial system where there's a certain amount of people operating with guarantees of stable tokens, and then maybe a riskier version of people operating in dollars?
Yeah, I always think that will be the case. There's no way to prevent that. I think there's always going to be people seeking out greater reward. And when you want to seek out greater reward or returns, you have to go through higher risk. And there'll always be an appetite for that. People will, in this market, love to speculate. They love to talk about the future value of something. So you'll have people, putting trust in these other entities and talking about, what it can become. And then you'll have, your Warren Buffetts out there who say, hey, I know I could always yield 5% off of this. Let me keep my money here. And that's always been, an investment strategy tons of people have employed throughout time. And I do think, there probably will be some good products out there that offer a more, diverse risk based on whatever assets they're holding. There could be upside in the holding things like precious metals and other aspects to like that. And I want to see innovation in the market. So I am excited to see some more high yield bearing stablecoins as well.
Yeah, but if you can't earn interest, how do you think people get value out of holding them?
I think the value out of holding them, I think there's still going to be, I don't think it's going to be called directly like interest, but there's going to be some way that you return a yield to the pool. There's many instruments you could do. You can take things, I guess out of circulation. You can like by depleting the supply of it. If you had like a fixed supply, I think there's ways to offer various other incentives into utilizing that thing. Like there's also ways to offer discounts, which, if it's going to change the buying power of that dollar and increase it through these discounts, that's another way to offer some type of, synthetic upside to utilizing that coin.
Good point. That's actually a good point. The whole reduction of supply thing, it's got some merit to it in a deflationary system. Maybe we'll use that. I mean, in fact, we are using it actually. So, like when we look at what our plans are, just to restate for everybody that maybe knew, we burn a specific amount of tokens out of each game, and our intent with that is to make sure that the supply is decreasing as time goes on, so that you're competing for the token harder, coming up with more and better ways as the game gets more and more competitive to try to find better ways to get alpha in the system so you get compensated for it. And the way we do that, for instance, in the spot game that will launch first, is the earlier that you can predict the accurate price of an asset. For instance, if it was a 1 minute Bitcoin game, if you could predict the exit price at 1 minute earlier before anyone else, you're going to get a greater share of the payout, which essentially looks like a system where you're getting, multiple X leverage on a 1X risk, which isn't something that exists anywhere right now. And then the other piece of it is we receive less off the games than we are burning. So even if for some reason we decided to like pull out our tokens that are winning that we won from running these games and then sell them out, the market is still decreasing supply. So the end effect of that is that people get more and more incentivized to get these tokens earlier and play earlier, and we get more and more quality in our signal faster. And then what we're doing is every 30 days, because we're transacting on our own, every 90 days, because we're transacting on our own signal, is we're taking a percentage of those gains every 90 days and then buying our token and burning them. So there's a record on the chain about how successful we are about managing that signal. So if you're out there and you're thinking about why would I hold FI token, this isn't a sales pitch that you should go do it, but that's a reason why you might want to consider it. And I would say, look at some of these other projects that are set by inflation, where the team's got these like squirrely unlocks where people are going to the foundation to loan tokens and doing all this other nonsense. There's a benefit to doing it right, which is something that we have planned and we're abiding by as we go. I'll leave you with the last remarks there, Matt. I want to say thanks to Radio Frog for joining us. But Matt, what would you say that we do differently than everybody else and is worth looking into us without giving financial advice?
Yeah, I would say the number one thing that we've been doing differently than everyone else is everyone hasn't been using the math, I think, in a correct way in crypto recently. What was great about, Bitcoin is, it's a fixed supply, it's complex to, mine these tokens and solve these problems and, continue to grow the circulating supply over this fixed period of time. And I think, Ethereum took a different route by having the ability to mint more ETH and create an inflationary supply. And a lot of this type of stuff doesn't work with inflationary systems. And, I thought we wanted to move away from the existing financial system. So I always am a little confused when we replicate some of the major issues of the existing financial system. And I think one of the things you need to focus on in this industry is a deflationary supply. Use math in your benefit to continuously have things where your utility is driving tokens out of circulation and depleting that supply so that you can keep up with any of the, the staking, these things that people have loved now. And you can also make sure that no matter what, as you're operating, you're constantly driving value back to the token holders, because a lot of these current infrastructures don't allow for that. And so I think that's one of the best things that, we've created is this ability to have a deflationary supply where, we're taking tokens out of each one of our games. And then as we're successfully able to transact off of the signal, we're also able to take tokens out of circulation and redeliver value back to our holders.
Yeah. So I almost could go off on a tangent about, why that doesn't work for power structures and why that's wrong with a bunch of stuff going on. But I'll save that to when we get closer to our TGE so that I can piss off as many potential regulators as possible. But until then, I just want to say thanks, everybody. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Radio Frog. Great to see everybody out there. Please join us on the Discord, discord.gg at FIDE-token. Join us on YouTube at Metafide. And join us on X at FIDE_AI. We hope to see everybody at the next one next Tuesday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. And in the meantime, keep your eye out on the Clarity Act as it works its way through the Senate. When that passes, we'll have ability to understand like who regulates whom, and then we'll start to see some process and procedure around the way products get brought to market, and essentially through the fact that the stable tokens are going to tie together a bunch of instruments in the global financial system. I think that's when we start to see these big dollars flow to these projects, and the mainstreaming of crypto gets translated to the mainstreaming of participation in the success of these investments. So it's going to be a really exciting 6 to 12 months coming forward. Like we've said before, I think the next Facebook, Amazon, Google is somewhere in this crop of companies being built right now. And like we've said internal to the company meetings, we have designs to be one of those. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for listening. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch you on the next one next week. Take it easy, y'all.
Metafide is the only AI-powered Bitcoin prediction game where traders compete in real time to forecast BTC's price in a fast 1 to 5 minute round. Test your skills against global players. Take on 1x risk with the ability to win multiplied payouts and prize pots. The more accurate and early, the better the outcome. Pre-register now for early access to generational wealth.